Once upon a time, far, far away and long, long ago, there was a valley, and it was a very special valley. It was the Valley of the Harborians, and it was a very small valley. And you can be sure that every boy in that valley was a prince, and every girl was a princess. And in that valley there lived a prince called Prince Richard. And it came to pass that he was all grown up and had to leave the Valley of the Harborians. He had to go to the Academy of Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence. So he went there for an open day, and he was appalled because all the other princes from all the other valleys behaved appallingly. They marched around clomping about in size 12 boots, pushing people out of the way, barking like dogs, brandishing their swords, and generally saying, "Look at me, look at me." And the princesses, they were even worse. They gathered together in small groups like gaggles of geese, and they rolled around on casters, and if they saw another princess who was smaller than them, or more vulnerable, or different, they would pick on that princess. And then he had to have a model lesson. Well, he didn't know what was going on. He sat at the back, scratching his head, bemused, bewildered, and in despair. He went home to see his mum, and his mum said, "Well, what's the matter with you?" And he said, "Oh, Mum, I don't think I'm going to get on at the Outstanding Academy in the Field of Excellence." "Ah," said Mum, "look, to answer any question, you have to go on a journey. And your first journey is down the corridor to your bedroom and tidy it up. And your second journey is that you must go to see the wise old woman that lives in the hovel in the woods." And so Prince Richard tidied his bedroom and then went to see the wise old woman who lives in the hovel in the woods. And so, after a lot of walking through the woods, Prince Richard came to the hovel of the wise old woman. He opened the door and walked in. And my goodness, what a strange place it was. All the furniture was on the ceiling, all the chairs, but the table, that was on the floor, but upside down. But Harborians always admired people who thought differently. There was a movement in the corner, and out came a black shadow. It was the wise old woman. And the wise old woman said,
"Oh, hello. You must be Prince Richard. And you've come here because you've got a bit of a problem."
"How do you know that?" said Prince Richard.
"Because nobody ever visits me unless they've got a bit of a problem. Now, what's your problem?"
"Oh, well, I have to go to the Academy of Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence, but I don't know if I'm going to be happy there. I don't know if I'm going to be humiliated. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the work. Will I fail? Will I make friends? Will I be lonely? I don't know."
Well, that's a lot of questions, isn't it? What you must do, Prince Richard, is put all your worries into one question. Now, what will that question be?
Okay. The one question, I suppose, is, will I be happy at the Academy of Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence? The wise old woman thought for a bit, and then thought,
"You have to go on a journey."
"Oh, no, not you as well."
"Oh, yes, that's right. Me as well."
"By the way, why do they call you the wise old woman that lives in the hovel in the woods?"
"Well, they call me that because I is wise, I is old, I is a woman, and I lives in a hovel, as you can see, in the woods. But the journey that you have to go on is to a different place altogether. You have to see Kuan Yin, the oracle. And to do that, you must go many miles and ask questions free."
"Oh, that's great," said Prince Richard. "I don't have any money, so I like free things." So he thanked the wise old woman, went home, packed his rucksack, and began his journey to see Kuan Yin, the oracle. After a few days walking, Prince Richard got to a ridge, and he looked down and he saw a snaky brown river making its way across the countryside. And across the river was a bridge, and he knew he would have to cross the bridge. But there were many people gathered at the bridge. They weren't crossing. They were waiting. He went down and he asked the people, "Excuse me, why are you waiting to cross the bridge?" "Oh," said one of them, well, we're waiting across because underneath that bridge is a giant, a big giant, and his name is Powerful. And any time any of us try and cross the bridge, he picks us up and throws us in the river." "Oh," said Prince Richard, "but I've got to get across the bridge. I've got to." And he remembered what Harborians do. When they see an obstacle, they find a way round it. So he took one step onto the bridge, and the giant's big hands grabbed the side of the bridge, and he leapt over and stood there. And he was enormous. He wore a silver suit, beautiful tailoring, but at the bottom of his legs were a pair of hobnail steel toe-capped 19-hole boots. The giant looked at the prince and said, "Well, well, well, what have we got here? You're on my bridge, and I will not let you pass." Now, Richard knew that when Harborians meet the powerful, they put their shoulders back, they look them in the eye, they put the feet apart, and they're polite. And Richard said, "Well, Your Honor, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you, but I'm afraid I must get across the bridge." "Oh, really? Why? Where are you going, young Harborian?" "Well, Your Honor, I'm going to see Kuan Yin, the oracle, because I want to ask a question." "Oh, do you? Well, I like your moxie, the way you talk to me without flickering your eyes, the way you don't praise me like a lickspittle, but get right to the point. I like that. So I'm going to let you go, only if you ask a question for me." "Of course I will, Your Honor. Anything you like." "Well, I'd like you to ask the oracle, why am I so powerful? Now off you go." "Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor." Well, Richard ran, and he ran through the legs of the giant, and he kept on running. Even when he was across the bridge, he didn't stop till he got a stitch in his side. Well, after a while, Prince Richard reached a deep, dark wood, a forest, and there was a sign at the entrance that said, "Do not go any further. Dangerous dogs." But Richard had to have his question answered, and like a true Harborian, he was resilient. He had to keep going. And so, after walking in the woods for a few hours, he had the distinct impression he was being watched. But he continued until he got to a clearing, and there it was, a dog. An enormous dog with powerful jaws, saliva dripping onto the forest floor, its eyes as big as saucers, and its black coat was scarred with scabs and beat marks, and around its neck was a collar of barbed wire, and its eyes were weeping with disease, and the dog looked angry. Richard looked to his right and saw there was another dog, white this time, and then to his left a dog, a brown dog, and behind him a yellow dog, a buff-coloured dog, all of them with the barbed wire collar, all of them with the savage beat marks, and all of them looking very, very angry. But Richard was an Harborian, and Harborians know that when faced with danger, they put their shoulders back. They look them straight in the eyes, feet apart, and they are kind. And so when the dog started to growl, Richard got his hand and put out his hand to the dog and with soothing words said, there, boy, there's a good dog," and touched the dog on the forehead and gently began to stroke the dog. The dog's anger turned to amusement, confusion. And then the dog began to poke his nose into Richard's hand, longing for an act of kindness. Richard then saw the other dogs come towards him, and he did the same. He stroked them. And then, getting a pair of pliers out of his rucksack, he snipped off the barbed wire collars of all the dogs, opened them, and saw that around the neck was infected, and he felt sorry for the dogs. And then he had some ointment in his pack. He started to treat the dogs with ointment, and all the time using very soothing words. "There, boy, there, oh, there, girl, there you are, there you are." Then he noticed that also round the dogs' necks were name tags. The black dog was Awful Owen. "Let me take that tag," said Richard, and he threw it away. "No, I will not give you a bad name. You're not Awful Owen, you're just Owen. And you, Biting Bess, you're the same. You're just Bess. Terrible Teddy, come here, come on, woo!" And he took that one off as well. And then looking behind, he saw the poor one. "Come over here, my darling, come over here, vicious Vincent. From now on, you're just Vincent." And then the black dog began to speak. Master, you have been very good to us. Tell me, where are you going?" "Oh," said Richard, "I am on a long journey. I'm going to Kuan Yin, the oracle, because I'm going to ask her a question for myself."
"Oh, good. Master, please, one last act for us. Will you please ask the oracle which one of us will be the leader?"
"Okay, then," said Richard, "I will, for you're now my friends, and I will do anything for my friends." And so the dogs escorted him out of the forest, because he realized that they weren't dangerous dogs. They had been maltreated, and they had a bad reputation. And soon he was in the bright sunlight of fields and open country. As Richard walked, he saw a most peculiar sight. It was certainly a bizarre sight. It was a man up a ladder, and the ladder was leaning against a tree, and the man was at the top of the ladder, and in his hand he had a very heavy stone, and he dropped the stone, ran down the ladder, but when he got to the bottom, he was in utter despair. Richard, curious, decided to ask him what he was up to. And he said, "Good morning, sir. Can I ask, what are you doing?"
"Oh," said the man, "see me, yeah? I'm a scientist. I'm a little bit science, I'm a little bit result, I'm a little bit writing it all up, and I'm a little bit getting it published. I'm a scientist, me. Scientist, that's what I am. And what I've been doing is a little experiment.
You see, I want to know that if I drop this heavy stone from the top of a ladder and it lands on my head, will it hurt? And I've been doing this experiment for 20 years. And every time I go up the ladder and drop the stone, by the time I get to the bottom, the stone has hit the ground, and I'm never going to know if it hurts if it hits me on the head. Well, at least there's progress. For the first 10 years, I didn't even have a tree. I used to climb the ladder and I used to fall over. But where are you going, young man?" "Well," said Prince Richard, "I'm going to see the oracle, Kuan Yin, because I've got to ask Kuan Yin a question."
"Oh, the oracle? Oh, do me a favour, please, do me a favour. Ask the oracle a question for me, please. Ask her this. Why won't my experiment work? Will you ask her? Will you?"
"Yes, I will," said Prince Richard. "Now, do you know where the oracle lives?"
"Oh, yeah. You go down there, you take a right, you take a left, you go down, you go up, and you'll see her house. It's just there. Now, I've got to get back up that ladder. This time it might work, because I'm a little bit science."
Well, Richard left the scientist and started to go to the oracle's house. And after a few hours, he saw the house in the distance, and he prepared himself to ask his question, will I be happy at the Academy of Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence? And then, at last, Prince Richard got to the palace of Kuan Yin. And it was a magnificent palace. There were many people strolling in the gardens. Richard steeled himself and walked in through the front door. Prince Richard waited for Kuan Yin to arrive. And when she came, she was beautiful. Her hair was blacker than the bottom of a well, and her eyes were so dark they were as deep as an ocean. And she smiled at him, and she said, "Welcome, Prince Richard of Harbonia." And he said, "How did you know my name?" And she said, "'Cause I'm an oracle, that's why. Now, do you have questions for me?" "Oh, yes," said Prince Richard, "I do. I have 4 questions." "4 questions?" said Kuan Yin. "Well, I'm sorry. I answer only 3 questions." "But the wise old woman that lived in the wood and the hovel, she said you answer all questions free." "No," said Kuan Yin. "Please remind the wise old woman that lives in the hovel in the wood to pronounce her TH. I don't answer questions free. I answer questions 3. Now, what are your 3 questions?" Well, poor Prince Richard. He slumped down because he had 4 questions, and he had promised the giant, the dogs, and the scientist that he would ask their questions, and Harborians always keep their promises. So, with a heavy heart, he said, "All right, dear Oracle, there is a scientist, and he asks, why doesn't his experiment work?" Well, Kuan Yin pondered for a while and said, "I know that scientist very well, and that scientist is a donut. Would you please tell the scientist that the best learning is always done in groups? You must share your learning if you want some success. Work in a team." Next question. "Oh, right, well, that's from the 4 dogs. They ask, who will be their leader?" "Ah, well," said Kuan Yin, "it's a very unpopular notion these days, but the best leaders are the ones who are kindest." Now, last question. "Oh, right, the last question is from Powerful the Giant. He asks, why is he so powerful?" "Well," said Kuan Yin, "he is powerful because people give him power. Once you stop being afraid of him, his power will diminish. Now off you go and close the door on the way out." Poor Prince Richard. He got up and he went, but before he closed the door, the oracle said, "Oh, Prince Richard, by the way, you know your question? You've already answered it." Well, Prince Richard was dying to get home, and he ran towards the scientist, and he said, "Scientist, guess what? The best science is always done in groups, so let me help you with your experiment."
"Oh, yeah, you helped me. Why didn't I think of that before? 20 years. Why didn't I think of that before?"
So Prince Richard ran up the ladder. He took the stone with him, and when the scientist was underneath, he said, "Right, left a bit, right a bit, left a bit. Okay, that's it." He dropped the stone, and the scientist, looking up, said,
"Yeah, I can see it coming. I can see it. Oh, ah, oh, oh, ah, 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 result! I now know if I drop a stone from on top of a ladder, it'll hurt. Thank you, Prince Richard, thank you."
Then Prince Richard went home through the woods, and he saw the 4 ferocious dogs, and the black dog
came up and said, Prince Richard, did the oracle answer the question? Who is to be our leader?
Richard looked around and said, I don't know who it's going to be, because the leader will be the kindest one. Well, the black dog looked at all the other dogs, and they nodded, and they said,
Prince Richard, you are the kindest one. You can be the leader.
And so Richard and the dogs ran towards the bridge. And when they got there, two massive hands clapped onto the side, and the giant vaulted onto the bridge. It was Powerful. And Powerful said, Oh, well, you're back. The little boy who is not a lickspittle. Did you ask my question from the oracle? Richard looked at the giant. Yes, Mr. Powerful. We asked your question, and the oracle said that you are powerful because people fear you, and to take away your power, we have to stop being afraid. And with my shoulders back, my eyes looking at you, and politeness, I am not afraid. And the dogs looked at the giant, and they said, Neither are we. Powerful, the giant, looked confused. He could feel his power draining away. What's happening to me? What's happening to me? My power, it's draining away, no! And smoke and mist came out of his suit. His head shrunk and his whole body diminished. And the empty suit then fell on a big pair of hobnail, steel toe-capped 19-hole boots. Well, Prince Richard went to the wise old woman that lived in the hovel in the woods. And she said, well, you're back, are you? Have you had success? Well, no, said Prince Richard. Because of you, I could only ask 3 questions, and I couldn't ask my own. Well, your question's already been answered, hasn't it? Well, you know now that best learning always takes place in groups, and you must share not only your learning, but yourself with other people. You also know that true leadership involves kindness, because that provokes loyalty. And if you are kind as a leader, you will always have friends. And of course, the last question, always stand up to power, look it in the eyes, and never be afraid. You see, those are the answers to your questions. Will I be happy at the Academy of Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence? Well, not really understanding anything that she said, Richard went to the Academy the next day. And when he saw those big princes with their big boots and their swords honking and barking down the corridors and pushing people out of the way, he would stand there, shoulders back, look them in the eye and say, Excuse me, you really are bang out of order. And they would reply, What? What? Really? What? Bang out of order? Oh, I see. All right, I won't behave like that again. And then when he saw gaggles of princesses picking on a little princess, he would go to the little princess and he would be kind to her and offer her his friendship. The gaggle of other princesses would see this and think, oh, she's worthy of kindness. Maybe we should be her friend as well. And then when he was at the back of the class and he couldn't get on with his work, he nudged the boy next to him and said, What do you think of it? And the boy would say, What do you think of it? And they would begin to talk about their learning, and together they would learn a lot more than if they studied alone. And so, by the end of his long journey, Prince Richard knew that he would be happy at the Academy of Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence.